There is no chaos, only patterns we fail to see. This is the Wren Files. I still remember that morning, not because of the rain, but because of the way the silence felt heavier than usual. Croydon was grey and wet, as it often is in early spring. The mist crept along the gutters like it had somewhere to be. I had just settled into my chair, a battered thing with one stubborn armrest, when I saw the envelope. No stamp, no address. Just my name, scrawled in trembling ink. Mr. Lucian Wren, Private Enquiries. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice, no signature. They said it was an accident, but he never went near the shed. Not at night. Please come. I don't have money, but I have the truth. Agnes Wilcox. The name struck something faint and familiar. I hadn't seen it in years. Agnes Wilcox, the wife of Daniel Wilcox, a former railway worker who died 7 years ago in what the coroner deemed an unfortunate fall. He had, allegedly, been trying to retrieve a loose shutter on the roof of their back shed. Slipped. Broke his neck. The file was clean. The case closed. Yet here I was, 7 years later, holding a ghost's whisper in my hand. Her home was tucked along a row of brick terraces, the sort developers call affordable, and the rest of us call barely standing. Number 14 looked different, cleaner but tired, like a woman who still brushes her hair each morning even if the world's long stopped looking. I knocked. Once, then again. The door opened with a creak I felt in my knees. Agnes Wilcox stood before me, a small woman, perhaps in her early 50s, though life had clearly robbed her of time. Her coat was an old man's trench, patched at the elbows. She wore no jewellery. Her hands were rough, the knuckles reddened by detergent and cold. Her eyes, however, were fierce, the kind you find in women who've raised children alone. "You came," she said. I nodded. "You wrote." She stepped aside, not waiting for more. Inside, the house was silent, unnaturally so. I could hear the tick of a clock upstairs and the faint humming of a child's toy somewhere behind closed doors. The living room was cramped but clean. A threadbare rug covered the wooden floor. The fireplace hadn't been used in years, sealed now, with framed photos along the mantel. 3 children, 2 boys in school uniform, a girl in overalls, all smiling with the forced energy of those who know the camera is for memory, not joy. She sat, motioned for me to do the same, and then said nothing for a long time. Finally, she began. "Danny never went in there, not at night, never without telling me. That shed, he hated that shed." "Then why was he found there?" I asked. "I think he was put there." The room seemed to breathe inwards. No one would listen. I told them the ladder was already there. The door was open. He wouldn't have done that, not with the kids inside asleep. He was careful, always careful. "Did anyone else have reason to hurt him?" She looked away. "I didn't think so then, but lately I've started remembering things, little things. The way the neighbour kept watching me, how Danny got quieter that last week, and—" She paused. "A letter I found, one he wrote but never sent." She reached into a tin box beneath the sofa cushion and handed it to me. Yellowed, folded twice. I didn't read it then. I wanted to. But some things deserve silence first. "You said you don't have money," I said. "I don't." "You have 3 children." "Yes. I work nights, cleaning, just until they're old enough." I looked around once more. The cracked window pane, the coat hook with one missing peg, the photo of Danny still hanging, but crooked. "All right," I said. "I'll take the case." It began with a creaking gate. Number 16, just 2 doors down, belonged to a Mr. Copley, a pensioner with a fondness for gardening and gossip, the sort of man who trimmed his hedges more often than his toenails and knew the life history of every family on the street. I caught him watering a patch of dry earth that hadn't seen a living plant in weeks. "Mr. Copley," I said, lifting my hat, "mind if I ask you a few questions about the night Daniel Wilcox died?" He didn't look surprised. He looked delighted. "Finally," he said, leaning on the fence. "Told the police something was off. Told them, but they wouldn't listen, bloody fools." He invited me into his garden, a sad little space of broken gnomes and cracked pots, and poured 2 cups of tea from a plastic thermos he kept for guests and emergencies. "I remember that night clear as day," he said. "It was bin night. Always is on a Wednesday. I was taking mine out when I saw Danny out the back. Strange thing he wasn't carrying tools, just standing by the shed, looking confused." "What time was this?" 9:30, give or take. He was in his slippers. That's what made me pause. Danny was particular, never wore slippers outside. "Did he see you?" "Number, but someone else did." He sipped his tea dramatically. "Colin. Lives in number 12. Shifty type. Came round the back from his garden, nodded at me. Didn't say a word. Then disappeared." "Did you tell the police that?" "Told them everything. They wrote it down like they were writing shopping lists." Back at my office, June had already begun digging. She was sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by old files, newspaper clippings, and something that looked suspiciously like a box of ginger biscuits meant for clients. "This one's odd," she said, holding out a faded report. "The coroner's notes. Look at this." At the bottom of the page, almost as an afterthought, was a line. "Minor abrasions on left wrist inconsistent with fall trajectory." "That wasn't in the summary," I muttered. June raised an eyebrow. "Because the summary was written by a desk sergeant who probably never read the full report." She passed me another folder. "This is the insurance document I requested. Took some digging. Daniel Wilcox took out a life policy 6 months before he died." "Reasonable enough," I said. 3 children, a wife. Except the beneficiary isn't his wife." I looked at the name. Colin Hayward. Number 12. I returned to the Wilcox house that evening. Agnes was folding laundry on the small sofa, her hands moving with mechanical tiredness. "Did Daniel ever mention Colin?" I asked. She froze, just for a moment, then resumed folding. "They used to work together. Railway maintenance. Colin was let go after an incident. Danny vouched for him once. I told him not to get involved." "Did he ever tell you why he named him in the policy?" She looked up at me, then down again. Number I didn't know he had. There was something else, I could feel it, but it wasn't ready to be said aloud. I asked if I could take another look at the shed. She handed me a ring of keys without a word. The shed smelled of oil and damp wood. It had been cleared out after the death, but some things never fully go away. I scanned the walls, scratches near the door frame, a broken latch that had been reattached clumsily. And then, behind an old toolbox wedged in the corner, I saw something wedged into the wall slats. A fragment of fabric, faded, torn. Blue flannel, not part of Daniel's work clothes, but not Agnes's either. Back in my office, June compared it against an old employment photo of Colin Hayward. Blue flannel shirt. Same pattern. The pieces were starting to fit. A man dead from a fall he shouldn't have made. A neighbour with motive, opportunity, and now a tangible presence at the scene. And a policy payout that never went to the family. But the biggest question still loomed. Why did Daniel name Colin in that policy? Why? Protect someone who had everything to gain from his death. That answer, I feared, was tied to the letter Agnes had shown me, the one I hadn't yet dared to open. I opened the letter that night. The handwriting was shaky, deliberate, as if each word cost the writer something. It wasn't long, just a single page, folded carefully and sealed with old grief. If anything happens to me, it won't be because of bad luck. I've done wrong. Not to Agnes, but to someone I once called a friend. Years ago, Colin covered for me after the incident at the depot. I should have lost my job. He lied for me, took the blame. He said he'd never forget it. And he didn't. He came back. Said I owed him. Said if I didn't pay him proper, he'd tell everyone what really happened. I didn't think he'd go this far. If I'm gone, tell Agnes I'm sorry. Tell her not to trust him. No signature, but it didn't need one. I folded it gently and placed it back in the tin box where Agnes had kept it the way people keep photographs of the dead. The next morning I found Colin Hayward at his usual haunt, the Rusted Tankard, a pub that smelled of beer and broken chances. He was hunched at the bar, nursing a pint, pretending not to see me until I pulled out the envelope. "You recognize this?" I asked, sliding it across the counter. He glanced down, then up. "Should I?" "I think you know you should." He chuckled a dry, ugly sound. "That old cow's still moaning about Danny. Let it go. It was years ago." "You know what's strange?" I said, keeping my voice calm. "You were named in a life insurance policy, collected a payout, but you weren't next of kin, weren't family, not even mentioned in the will." He stiffened. "I helped him, saved his job once." "And he paid for that with his life?" Colin stood up a little too quickly and knocked over the stool, eyes darting, not angry, panicked. "I didn't touch him." "No," I said, rising to match him. "You just blackmailed him, pressured him, cornered him until the only thing left to do was sign you into his death." He opened his mouth, but no sound came. Just a twitch of the jaw, a man realizing the game had ended a few turns ago. "You should know," I added, lowering my voice, "that the letter was never sent. No one knew about it. Not until now." And I watched it, that flicker, that tiny, near-invisible shift behind his eyes. He had believed the secret had died with Daniel. Now it was alive and roaring. Back at Agnes's home, I told her everything, gently, slowly. She sat with the letter in her lap for a long time, her fingers resting on the crease like it was a wound she couldn't quite close. "I knew he was struggling," she whispered. "But he never told me, not all of it." "You were trying to protect the children," I said. She nodded. I thought, maybe if I just stayed quiet, kept going, it would pass. That silence could be safer than truth. "It never is," I said, "but sometimes it's all we have until someone listens." Inspector Quinn moved quickly after that. Colin Hayward was arrested under suspicion of coercion, fraud, and wrongful enrichment. Not quite murder, but as close as the law could reach for now. The insurance company launched a review. Agnes was contacted within the week. She wouldn't receive the full payout, but enough to fix the roof, replace the broken window, maybe even take a night off work. It wasn't justice in full, but it was something. And sometimes something is what keeps people breathing. Before I left, Agnes walked me to the door. Her coat was the same, her hands still rough, but her eyes were different. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You already have," I said. "You didn't stay silent." She smiled, faintly, then added, "You know, Daniel always said there were two kinds of lies, the ones people tell, and the ones people live with. I think I've lived with mine long enough. I tipped my hat and stepped into the rain. The mist was lighter now, the gutters clear, and somewhere, behind me, a woman began to breathe again.